Hello everyone. I feel like I'm very close in this one. I don't know. I'm not gonna bother. Welcome to this video. I'm doing these two together because I kind of left. They won't come out at the same time though. I just did the top astrology books, and I wanted to lead straight into, while it was like in my mind, my top Taro books, because they kind of led into each other. So anyway, I wanted to jump straight into it, and I wanted to start off with one. If you've watched that video, I did mention this one already, so I'm just going to briefly talk about it. Not even that, I'm just going to really mention it. And that is the Taro and Astrology book. I didn't say who it was by in the last one. It's called, it's by Corinne Kenner. So that's why I kind of wanted to do this video straight away, because this was the last book I mentioned in that video. So check out the astrology book video if you want to hear a little bit more about it, but it does link into the Taro, so I had to mention it here because it is a Taro book as well. So the first one I wanted to reference, because I have to put a little caveat in here. First of all, I think the best guides for Taro is actually the guidebooks that come with your deck. One thing that I hate, well, okay, I'm going to say hate because I do hate it, is that people, especially when you're starting out, people feel like they can't reference the guidebooks that come with the deck. Or it's like you're not good enough if you're reading a guidebook. There is nothing wrong with reading your guidebooks. The reason why I say that it's actually a really good practice is because when a deck creator creates their deck, even though there's sort of symbolic meanings of each tarot card aren't going to change because that's the style of tarot, the interpretation is. So the artwork, for example, is going to be different. The energy that the tarot deck creator, I don't know, that sounds like so long. The creator of the deck is interpreting it in their own kind of way. So when you read the guidebook, you're picking up on that particular deck's energy, the messages that are coming through from that. And I also feel like it's a great way to expand your knowledge, just like listening to other readers. The amount of times I listen to other readers and go, huh, that's a really cool way of interpreting that card. And it sticks with me because I like the way that reference is being made of a particular card. So I do feel like when you do get tarot decks, the first point of call for that particular deck is always going to be your guidebook. And don't feel like, even if you're an experienced tarot reader, don't feel like you can't read the book. That's just my 2 cents on that. So the next one I'm going to reference, I have a love-hate relationship with this guidebook. And the reason being is this is a book that I've actually had since I got my very first tarot deck, and I reckon I've had it since I was about maybe 16. I think that's when I purchased my very own Rider-Waite tarot deck, and it came on its own, so I had to get, it didn't really have like much of a reference book. It had just like one of those small paper ones in there, so it didn't have enough detail for me. So I bought this book as well, and it's an older book. It's old. I don't even know what it was. This is it's a second printing from May 1980. That is how old it is. And it's called Taro, a new handbook for the apprentice, by Eileen. I think it's Eileen Connolly. Now, it's a good one for reference with the Rider-Waite deck, because that is like the traditional tarot that all modern tarot decks are based on. So it is good for that, but it's very outdated in its interpretation. I felt like it's very doom and gloom, or like has more like that negative kind of connotation behind the interpretations. But I will say that it's a little complicated in the front, with like how interpretations are. So I kind of skipped that. It's got like blessings and prayers and very kind of, it's almost religious-y sounding. So I kind of used to skip past that. But when it comes to the actual cards, it's got good like references. I'm just trying to get to the like where it comes in. So it does talk about like the Jewish symbols and the Hebrew symbols and stuff, which you do actually find in the Taro. I feel like that's a little bit more advanced and complicated, so I never really referenced that, and I feel like the books that I have that I will go over into that kind of stuff a lot more better than what this does, because it's so outdated. But it does have good, like, look at the first one. This is the Minor Arcana, the Ace of Wands. Like, it's got good key points and structures, and it does actually reference if it, not with all cards, but it does sort of have a bit of a reference if it comes out in conjunction with another card. This is what it could actually mean. It does have, like, on the second, yeah, see, like here it has like if it's next to the Tower card and stuff, like what it can actually mean. If there's like Pentacles and Cups on the sides, and like where it shows up in the reading. So it does have like little good references like that, but more so it's the key points and the key references. This is actually the first interpretations that I ever learned about the Tarot from this book. So it was very, very old school. I have to get them in a second. And yeah, it's I don't want to say it's darker, it's just more in that very like old school structured, like, ooh, the Devil card has to mean something kind of negative. Like, that's how I feel like it's always sort of coming out. So I had like a little bit of a hate relationship with that, because I never sort of felt like all cards were negative. So but it is a good book to reference like the traditional kind of meanings of the tarot cards. So, and this is like the first book that I ever used to understand the tarot, hence why I'm mentioning it, because my base knowledge started from here. So yeah, I'm just gonna pause this so I can collect the books I just dropped. Okay, I'm back. The next one, it is a fairly new one, and I want to say I don't reference it too much, but it is one of the only other traditional tarot books that I actually do own. And I did like how it was set out. It's called Magical Tarot. So this has got a little bit more like, what's the word? Like magical components, like how you can work with a card from a like more spell work or ritual kind of perspective. It is a hardcover. I do like that, especially when you're referencing these kind of books if they're going to get used a lot. I'm not a big fan of hardcovers in general, but when it comes to like working books that you're actually going to be like physically doing things with, I do like that. It's not like heaps detailed. So like I just opened it up onto the Emperor, for example. It's not like a whole bunch of detail. It's like a chart. It does have like a couple of other pages with the symbolism and how to do like spell work or ritual work with it before you get to the next one. But like and there's another spell component in there too. But it does have like the zodiac, the colors, what it rules, if it's in a yes or no kind of spread, what it might mean, what it means upright, like keywords and reversed, and the description of the card. So like it does have, that's what's in your little chart. So it has like the basics that you need to know. It's really good for just like quick references and stuff. I don't know what deck it's actually referring to with the images and stuff like that. It's not the traditional one. It might be something that this person created. It's by Robin Valentine, who created the Tired Witch. I don't know what that is. I just remember I saw this one on, I think it was on Instagram or something, and I was following the creator. So when it came out, I did actually get it because I did like it for the ritual component and stuff. And I will say I have referenced this book for the key points and stuff. So it is very much a simple, easy to use, basic understanding of your tarot cards. So now we've gone through basic tarot, we're going into advanced tarot, because I'm going to be completely honest here. This is the stuff that I reference the most, because I like this kind of stuff the most. If you've been around for a while, especially in my Patreon community when I had that, I love psychological aspects. That's how I do a lot of my practice with tarot and astrology, is tying in the mythology and the psychology behind the meanings and how that applies to us in daily life. So the next ones that I have are all going to be in that kind of genre. The first one that I ever got to reference it, and I actually really enjoy the way the interpretations are done, because they're not like overly complex, they're not overly deep in terms of like the deep dive into the archetypal components, but enough that you understand it, but it still has like, I want to say slightly more surface level meanings. And it's called Taro as the Way of Life. And it's a Jungian approach to the tarot by Karen Hanamaker Zondag. It's an old school looking book, but it's worth it. It has each card in here, and it's not like super in depth. Like, for example, I mean, we start with the Chariot here. It goes from this page, and then it's like one more like page and a bit. So it's not like super in depth, but it's enough to give you an understanding of what the card represents psychologically, and from that Jungian perspective, which is what the Jungian psychology is going deep into the psyche. But it does it in a way that's easy to understand. So I'd probably say this is one of like the first points of call if you're like dipping your toe into understanding archetypal aspects in tarot, and the like more deeper level meanings of what a card can represent. I feel like not looking at the psychological components in tarot and astrology does the art form a disservice, because you can get so much more depth and understanding in a reading of understanding what the cards actually represent. Let me just like, I just want to give an example. Okay, so we have like the Nine of Wands. So it's a yang energy, so yin and yang, so masculine and feminine. So it goes into like what each card represents, the sequences, and how they kind of show up. Like it says here, it explains what the card is, like a card showing a wary man with a belligerent attitude who has already earned him a broken hand. 9 emerges here as a movement, so it talks about the symbology of the numbers as well, and what the number represents. 9 emerges here as a movement that is too much in one direction, that of springing into action and starting a fight without considering the other responses may be possible. That other responses, I should say. The card can refer to past setbacks that have increased our distrust. This card alerts us to the danger of continuing to react too one-sidedly, and so to invite problems. The turning point comes with the cultivation of an open mind and a willingness to let go of the past. So you can see, like, if you know your tarot, traditionally the 9 of Wands would be seen as like the wounded warrior, like someone who's been through it. We've had a lot of battles. We've been like feeling like, you know, we don't want to keep going. Like, we're exhausted, we're overwhelmed, that kind of feeling. Like, that's really the energy that you get from the 9 of Wands. So this just takes it just that little step further of going a bit deeper into it, but it's still in that basic meaning of the card. So it's not like overwhelming in terms of the psychology component behind the tarot meanings. Hence why I think this is probably like, I think I've referenced this one the most in all of my studies, because it doesn't overwhelm you. So yeah, definitely one of my top tarot books. The next one that I know I've referenced a bit as well, even though I haven't read it heaps, is this is actually a very, very popular book. This is a new edition of it too, because I know it's been out for a while. It's called 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And it's a tarot journey to self-awareness. Again, it's kind of like, let's see if I can pull out we've got major arcana here. It's very much into that like deeper self-reflection. These are especially good if you're working for doing your own readings or practicing with your own readings, because it gives you a deeper look into how it can show up of your emotional aspect and what's going on mentally in your mind and why a card's coming up, especially if you're getting repeat cards, to understand the deeper aspects. So yeah, we have like a bit of a description, but it also goes into the meanings of what it can actually represent from reversals. So this is like the twos, for example, and how they can show up. So again, this is fairly basic, but it also connects into the combination of where they actually join into the major arcana, which is really important to understand the connections in the tarot between the minor arcana and the major arcana, to give you a deeper understanding of the card meanings in overall, because the minor arcana are facets of the major arcana. The major arcana rule over different aspects. So this is a really good one for sort of having those kind of connections and connecting those dots. And it's still not overwhelming. It's still written in a way that's very easy to understand, and it doesn't kind of like dive you into like deep psychological understandings or anything like that. So again, it's definitely one that I would recommend. The next one would be this one or that one. I think I'm going to reference this one. Archetypal Taro by Mary K. Greer. These books all have very similar tones to how they kind of reference things. So I do like with this one though that it actually looks at your individual card numbers. So if you've seen tarot readings before that kind of tell you what is your birth card, your birth tarot card, for example, and you have to do like your numerology of adding up your numbers in your name or your date of birth and things like that, like personality cards, things like that. This is really cool for that. So it actually combines the numerology, bringing in the numerology a lot more with the tarot itself. So it gives you a really cool perspective of understanding that as well. So, and understanding how that shows up in your life and how you can work with the card. It also gives you like your personal year card, so what you're going into for the next year, how you can add that up to understand what tarot card is going to be influencing you for the year and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting. It's like, it's just a different perspective of like working with the cards, and a different way of working with the cards. And it also can give you like a different way of working if you work with clients, of how different services and stuff that you can offer as well, of going into that. So definitely recommend this one to kind of go into that niche way of working with tarot cards. That's not about looking at it from, I don't know what's going on, but there's a lot of sirens going on. But yeah, so it's not like you're like traditional, like doing a basic reading. This is like more individual, like doing it for yourself and maybe doing it for clients and stuff as well, but offering a very unique archetypal service. So it's definitely a really cool one to reference, and it kind of gives like a deeper reflection on the cards themselves as well. Specifically, more so in most ways with the major arcana. It does talk about the minor arcana as well, but yeah, it's just really cool. I feel like it's one that like you get and you're like, huh, like you might not reference it all the time, but it's definitely one that you're like, oh, that's actually a really cool way to kind of see things. The next one is looking deeper. This is starting to go deeper into the reflections of Jungian psychology. So it's Taro and the Archetypal Journey the Jungian path from darkness to light. So this really does kind of bring in that psychological concept in, like you see so often, of the hero's journey, and focusing on like how the Taro kind of highlights the hero's journey to a more of a degree, and going deeper into, like, it's far more, like, I just opened it up to strength, for example, and it's like quite a few pages of in-depth reflections on what the actual card represents. I believe this is focusing mostly on the major arcana. It doesn't really reference too much on the minor arcana. This is more the major arcana. So this is like the deeper dive into the hero's journey through the major arcana and what they represent. It's very fascinating and interesting because it does bring in like certain components of like the history of where Taro kind of started and the spiritual meanings behind the Taro, which is really strongly linked into the to Catharism, the Cathars, which is like a particular belief system that the church tried to wipe out. Those kind of aspects. So it goes a little bit more into like the traditional kind of meanings behind the cards, but more so from a more modern perspective, from a Jungian approach. So it's far more in depth on the major arcana. So if you're looking for the minor arcana, it doesn't really cover that. But sometimes the as I said, like if you have like this overall understanding with books of like where the minor arcana kind of fall in under the major arcana, it's these kind of books give you more depth with minor arcana anyway, because you know how they kind of coincide with your minor arcana. But this is definitely one that's really interesting to understanding, working with like, and when a major arcana shows up in a reading. If you watch a lot of readings, you'll know already that when a tarot reader does readings and a lot of major arcana show up in a reading, it's always going to be mentioned that it's a very significant time in your life, because you only have 22 major arcana in a deck and the rest are all minor arcana. So the odds of the major arcana showing up when you have 78 cards is very it's not, especially when you get multiple, it's not as high. So when you get so many showing up, you know there's a spiritual significance in a reading, or a big point in a reading. And when you're coming from the psychological perspective, you can give like a different, deeper meaning into why this is showing up. Because when we say there's a spiritual change and a spiritual aspect, like let's say like you have like, you know, the devil, the moon, and the chariot and the sun show up in this reading, and you're like, okay, so we can look at like the predominant meanings. Like the moon is like the something hidden coming to light, the sun is success, the devil is like addictions and desires and overcoming that, and the chariot is movement. So you can see that as like a basic understanding that something, you're going to come to a realization about something that's been holding you back, and you're going to move forward and find success. That can be a basic kind of reading. But if you're coming from this deeper psychological aspect, you can go deeper than that. You can understand that it could be, for example, like the sun has got components that represents the divine masculine. It represents aspects of our ego as well. It also represents our vitality. The devil card is not just about being chained to something or desires. It can be a deeper component into something that we didn't even realize that we desired at all. Devil isn't always negative. And that's where that moon illumination can come in, because it represents the subconscious mind, and things coming to light. So it could be like a hidden desire that you didn't realize is actually triggered and comes to the surface, that you maybe had from when you were a child, because the sun card can represent the inner child. And the chariot, which is also when you die in your astrology, you've got like Leo energy, you've got Pisces energy, you've got Capricorn energy, and those cards, like, again, I don't want to do a reading, but you can kind of get what I mean. Like when you have a deeper understanding of these, tying in astrology and psychology with your readings, you can add so much more depth than just a basic interpretation of what the card means. So the final book is actually a new one. I want to admit that I've only flicked through this, not because it's not a good book, but just because I kind of drifted out of working with the tarot. But I know this author's work and I follow her a lot, so I know how she does her interpretations and what she does. And she also focuses very deeply on the psychological aspects and approaches. And it's called Taro for Change. It's only came out earlier this year. And this again is like going deeper into the cards, like a deeper reflection, like this is the Lovers, for example, and going deeper in how we can sort of work with the Lovers card from, it's not like super deep, like you can see there's only like 2 pages really, a little bit over 2 pages of going into like how the card kind of shows up. Not quite from the same psychological perspective, but I don't even know how to explain it. It is psychological, but it's not. It's her interpretation of it. It's got like spiritual components to it, archetypal components to it. It's just a deeper reflection on the cards themselves. So it's kind of and I know she goes into all the cards. So it's kind of like, when you have like this book with your archetypal aspects from the spiritual perspective, it kind of does that, but it goes into your minor arcana as well. Like you've actually got, I'm going to just open it up to the 8 of Pentacles here, for example. It's more modern, I suppose. This is actually very, very, very modern interpretations of things. So concepts that, like, if you've ever gone to therapy now, or if you follow people like that on social media and stuff, you'll recognize certain terminologies and certain words and certain aspects and reflections. So this is a really good book from that perspective, and how to kind of work with it from a deeper level for yourself. More than anything, this is a really good one to work with for yourself. So are all of them, and they're always going to enhance and benefit your practice if you do readings for other people. But yeah, this is definitely one that, as I said, I haven't read the book yet, not because I don't want to. It's just I do know the author's work really well already, which is why I bought it, because I wanted it on my shelf, because I know I'll reference it at some point. And this is a really good one. I know most people who actually read this went through the journey of reflection with each card, like, and reading it and sort of doing, like, it's really good to do journaling alongside of what kind of comes up with how you work with the card and what it kind of brings up when you're reading her interpretations of it, and how it kind of comes up for you, and individually working your way through the deck. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't read this book yet, because I kind of wanted to be in the right frame of mind to do that at the same time. My dog's just started barking. So yeah, that's why this is my final one to reference. I didn't say who it was from. It's by Jessica Dorr. Definitely worth following on social media as well if you don't already follow her. So on that note, I'm going to finish up there. That is my reflection on the tarot. There's a few other books that I do have, but they're all in the same kind of thread. Whether it's the spiritual history of where the tarot came from and the spiritual reasons behind the tarot, or I have more like reflections on the psychological aspects of the tarot cards. So, and I have a few like fun ones as well that are like for specific meanings. So, but these are ones that I would reference the most, and what I feel like benefits people outside of the guidebooks that you get in a tarot deck, that are actually going to enhance your tarot practice in a way that, it sounds so stupid to use the word transcend, but that's how I feel like they transcend the traditional ways of seeing the tarot or reading the tarot, and kind of take it out of like the mainstream of, just interpreting a card for whatever it is from a very basic meaning. It takes it deeper, and that's what I feel like does justice to the tarot and to astrology from that perspective as well. Going deeper and understanding that these art forms were created originally as a form of spiritual practice as well. So instead of using them just as tools to understand like a very basic message of, will I fall in love? You are going to understand the deeper things that you need to work on in order to achieve love in your life, or what's holding you back from feeling love in your life, and those kind of aspects. Like, it gives so much more depth. So it's not going to be books for people who just want dirty tarot, which is what I feel like a lot of spirituality is these days when you see them on channels and stuff. So, but anyway, I won't go there. So yes, thank you for watching. I think the next one I'll probably do in this spiritual series is probably going to be like my magical books maybe, or it might actually be on the psychology side of things as well. I don't know. We'll see what I feel like doing at the time. So I hope you've enjoyed the first couple of videos in this series, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.